Thank you, and thank you so much for being here. The Department of Education was created by an act of Congress and can only be dissolved by an act of Congress. This administration knows that, and I suspect, based on what we've seen, that this chaos and confusion, this flooding the zone, is going to rain down on the Department of Education to try to convince the American people that we don't need it, to strangle out funds meant to support public education, and ultimately just turn off the lights. It's important to understand what it means by Republicans calling to end the Department of Education. The Department of Education does not handle curriculum, instruction, or instructional materials. Those decisions are already made locally by state and local boards of education. But what the Department of Education does handle is civil rights protections for all students. They handle supports for low-income students through their Title I funding. They develop and prepare educators through Title II funding and professional development. They provide resources for English language learners, collect statistics on enrollment, staffing, and crime in school. And the department is responsible for more than $1.6 trillion in federal student aid. 49 million students attend public school in this country, and all of the services provided by the Department of Education are at risk. Of those, 7.5 million students receive special education or related services under the Individuals with Disabilities in Education Act. IDEA makes a free and appropriate public education available to all eligible students. That means the occupational therapist that helps a student just to hold a pencil, because in their brain they have all the information, they just need to figure out a way to articulate that, is at risk. And I think people need to understand that an IEP is a legal document. It is not an education, solely an education document. Ending federal funding or eliminating the department does not end our legal obligation to provide these services to kids. So one of two things will happen. Either local communities will have to make hard choices about what other resources they have to cut to meet their legal obligation to educate these children, or their taxes will go up to replace the funding that the federal government is no longer sending. Now, I've seen the NAEP scores. I'm open to having any conversation to improve education and get better results for students. But I think if we're looking at those scores, we have to be honest. The numbers are brought down by red states who have failed to invest in education over decades. But any real solution that we're talking about for improving educational outcomes for our students cannot be limited to funneling money to private voucher programs, which only about 1 million students take advantage of. What about the other 48 million students? Any real solution has to include solving for the barriers that impede education, the things that cause children to show up not ready to learn, things like housing insecurity, things like empty bellies, things like a lack of health care, no access to FMLA for their families so that their parents can't stay home with them when they're sick, birth to 3 initiatives, pre and postnatal care, gun violence in schools. If you want to have a real conversation about educational outcomes, let's do it. I'm here for it. But Elon Musk, Donald Trump, and the elites in this country don't need public schools. They don't have to send their children to public schools. They can afford to send their children somewhere else. I'm standing up for all the students who don't come from those kind of families, for all the parents who can't afford to make those choices, for all the teachers who greet those students and try their best to give them the type of education that they see in other communities, because they deserve it. So I remain committed to maintaining the integrity of the Department of Education and fighting back against all of these cuts, because this smash and grab tactics and attempts to rob the penny bank of America's children and their future is not something that House Democrats are going to stand for.